Hi, I'm joined today in the Chicago office by Carl, who's a demo engineer here at Stripe. Carl, welcome.
Great to be here.
First of all, tell me a little bit about your role. Demo engineer is an interesting kind of job title. What do you do?
Very niche role, I completely agree. If you've ever been to a Stripe event, you will know that we are very demo heavy. We believe in showing, not telling. And more importantly, all of our demos are live. So everything that we do is completely legit. We don't pre-record our demos or anything like that. Because of that, there has to be an engineer behind it, making sure that the demos are built to what we want to show, and that they also run smoothly throughout the actual live demo. And so my job is primarily focused backstage, and I sit there with a laptop and make sure that everything is running smoothly, and I can jump in if anything goes wrong, though they never do. And aside from that, I primarily build demos for go-to-market motions, so primarily solutions architecture and AEs selling to new Stripe users. But on top of that, I also support corporate events like Stripe sessions and Stripe tours.
Okay, and so you're doing a demo in person yourself tonight at the Stripe meetup for developers in Chicago. A little bit of a chance to be the other side of the presentation, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it because I've gotten the backstage view of how these demos really go, but I've never really been in the shoes of the people who are in front of the audience and are properly giving the demo. So I'm really looking forward to actually being on the other end of the computer.
And you're going to be demoing something called Stripe Projects. Can you tell us a little bit about what is Stripe Projects?
Absolutely. So Stripe Projects as a whole is something that we sort of drummed up earlier this year. So what we noticed is that CLI use of Stripe was booming. Prior to this, most people were doing stuff via the dashboard or they were making API calls to interact with Stripe. But all of a sudden, we saw an uptick of that Stripe CLI. And we realized it's because of agents. Agents love to call commands on your computer. And so what we designed was Stripe Projects to handle the post-creation aspect of building. So builders will build these amazing apps, and they'll do it all on their local machine. But the minute it goes to putting it on the public internet and actually giving it to other people to interact with, they find themselves hitting a wall. And that's what Stripe Project solves. So it can provision brand new accounts and resources with vendor APIs and spin up brand new hosting solutions, buy domains for you. The whole point there is that you can take your app, which is currently living on your computer, and you can turn it into something that other people can actually interact with, all via a CLI. And because Stripe is the payment infrastructure of the internet, you can also pay securely for all of those things as well. And so it really gives solopreneurs and builders the ability to take their locally built applications and have an agent take it to the next level and put it on the public internet.
It's a really interesting product space for a company like Stripe to be moving into, I think.
Yeah.
I've spent a bit of time experimenting with Stripe projects. And the thing that I found fascinating about it is that it can create an application stack more quickly than you can really understand all the things that it's provisioning behind the scenes.
Yeah.
How do you, what's on the roadmap to help people kind of understand what it's actually building and how to log into some of these services that it's provisioning?
I think what's important to recognize there is that Stripe isn't really the intermediary between you and the vendor. So when it provisions a new account for you, it is your account. So you can actually go and log into the real dashboard for Supabase if you decide to use Supabase. And you can log into your Cloudflare account after it's made via Stripe Projects. So all these resources are something that you own. And when I build, I generally speaking don't even really think about this type of thing. I sort of just let the agent do what it thinks is best when I'm just trying to get something off the ground. But for those who want to have a little bit more control over that, because Stripe has a fully published catalog and great skills to go along with Stripe projects, your agent's able to sort of make recommendations, but you're also able to shape the resources that it provisions. So if you have something in mind, you can tell it to do that. And if not, you can just have your agent sort of go off and wire everything together itself, knowing that it's going to end up with something that you can manage down the line.
So how much does the agent workflow provision for you versus you kind of prompting it along and guiding it on what you want?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a little bit of a sneak peek into the demo tonight. I'm going to give it no shape at all. I'm just going to let it do what it wants. And what I've found is that the agent is able to negotiate all of that from start to finish. So if you have something that you want built, you can have it on the public internet with completely no instruction on how to do that. And then truthfully, what you've asked is sort of a choose your own adventure type thing. You can shape how you want it to be. If you want it to use something in particular, you can do that. If you have an idea of how you want to get something done, you can do that. But something that I've really noticed is cool about Stripe projects is that as it's available as a skill on your agent, it's as you're trying to build out new features that you might not even think about Stripe projects to use, it'll go off and provision those resources without you even asking. So I wanted to add something with transactional email to a small app I was building, and it went out and just found a provider on Stripe projects to do that and set it up for me all in one fell swoop.
What's the kind of aha moment that you think developers have when they first start using Stripe projects?
Yeah, I think it's a really foreign thing to put this in the hands of your agent. Like, everybody thinks, why would I want to do that, right? I'm provisioning all of these resources that are so critical for this app to run successfully. But I think the aha moment comes when you realize just how seamless your agent is able to do this. And so, it's sort of one of those things that you can't believe it till you see it. But then all of a sudden, when your Vercel account is provisioned, a service is online, and you have a domain connected to it in under a few minutes, which is something that could have taken hours before, you have that moment of realization that this is going to be the future, that it's not really necessary to have people open up a million browser windows and do this themselves anymore, and that agents are getting really, really good at understanding the nitty-gritty of how things work, and we can trust them to do this type of thing.
That's true. One of the sort of added benefits it gives you is keeping you in your IDE, so you can stay in that context of what you're building and not have to keep moving around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any areas or constraints where you would say it's not the right tool for the job?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's going to be a point where you're ready to go beyond what Stripe projects can offer as a whole. And so all of those resources that you've provisioned, they're yours, and so you can sort of bring them with you. But when you start to get to that enterprise level of, wow, this is a really cool product that I'm building, and you're ready to really take it to the next level and have hundreds of people possibly working on this code base, of course, it's probably not going to be the best thing for you at that point. But I think that's sort of the beauty of Stripe projects, because these are not headless accounts that you never have access to again. They're your accounts, and they're your resources. And so when you're ready to disconnect from Stripe projects, you can totally do that. You can upgrade to the premium plans and sign contracts with all the various different vendors that you use, and you don't have to worry about being vendor locked into a one specific tool. Stripe projects is not meant to lock you in, but rather to get you going and let you off into the world.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the demos that you've built for maybe Stripe Tour that you're showcasing in the next few weeks? Are you allowed to speak about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the coolest things to me is MCP apps. Okay. So it's we're all familiar with MCP at this point. We have the ability to access data via our AI agents. But MCP apps allow you to embed actual Stripe surfaces into your AI apps. And so, for instance, if I'm interacting with Claude and just the Claude web version or on the mobile app, and I want to know about something specific to what's going on with Stripe, well, I can fire off a request via MCP apps and actually get a rendered surface from Stripe directly in there. So I can actually interact with Stripe. I can do various different things that I would never have the ability to do prior. And instead of guessing about how your AI agent's going to visualize that, MCP apps allows us as Stripe to embed actual Stripe surfaces into your AI experience.
What's an example of a rendered surface, a Stripe rendered surface?
Yeah, so for instance, I was actually just looking at it, one of the Stripe accounts that I sort of have access to, and I was asking it for information about churn rates for subscriptions. And so normally what would happen is your for instance, Claude would have to go out and make this request to Stripe, get the data, and then it would attempt to render it itself. It would make maybe a graph of what the churn rates looked like over a specific period of time. And it can do a pretty decent job, but it can sometimes be a bit flaky and not exactly what you're looking for. So the beauty of this is that we can actually have a real Stripe component rendering in something like Claude ChatGPT over this new open standard of MCP apps. So now I can have Stripe Sigma creating all these great reports and rendering it live in my personal agent of choice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've not heard about that.
You'll have to keep an eye on it
Very
for
cool.
Stripe Tours.
Yeah, I will. So tell me, final question. Stripe Projects is very new, isn't it? What do you think it looks like a year from now? I know that's difficult. Things are changing so quickly in tech at the moment. But give me what does success look like 1 year from today with Stripe Projects?
That's such an interesting question, because I think, as we've seen with all AI tools, we have no idea what's going to happen a year from now. And I think if I were to really put a finger on what success looks like for this, is that the community shapes it in the way that it works best for them. And so because this is sort of an open platform of sorts, I would love to see hundreds, if not thousands, of providers onboarded to Stripe projects, up from our already, I think we're in the 50s of providers. So I would love to see other users really joining in on the Stripe projects hype and adding new providers providers and it becoming an actual part of people's day-to-day workflows. So that AI work stream that we're all trying to build is so so streamlined that we're able to depend on this as like a normal part of our stack.
Well, look, let's come back a year from now into the Chicago office, and we'll do like a catch-up and see like how close you were to the prediction.
I would love that.
Yeah, great.
See you in a year.
Thanks so much for coming in to speak to us. And I'll make sure we put your meetup talk in the link description of this video.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Thanks, Carl.